It was a quiet evening, and I was hanging up Christmas lights in our living room. The soft twinkle from the string of lights made everything feel cozy. Outside, the sun had gone down, and the sky was turning a deep shade of blue. Aloan, my 8-year-old daughter, was sitting on the couch, hugging her stuffed bear and watching me carefully. She loved Christmas. I loved Christmas, too, but this year felt different. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. I picked it up and saw a message from my mom. My stomach sank as I read the words. They were cold and sharp like ice. The message said, "Only good kids get presents at the family Christmas. Your unwanted child can leave." Aloan leaned closer, her little eyes wide as she looked at the screen. She didn't speak, but I could see her small hands trembling. Tears started to come into her eyes, and my heart twisted in my chest. I felt a surge of anger, but I kept my voice calm. I typed back with shaking fingers. Understood. But before I continue, hit the subscribe button and tell me where are you watching this from, and what time of day is it? Every year, I spend so much money and effort on Christmas for my family. I bought toys for my sister's kids, clothes and jewelry for my parents, and tried to make everything perfect. I wanted Aloan to feel loved by her grandparents and her aunt and uncle. But every year, it felt like no matter how much I gave, it wasn't enough. And now, after all that, they had said my daughter was unwanted. I opened the shopping app on my phone and found the order confirmation for all the gifts I had bought. I clicked cancel all, and a confirmation email popped up right away. 15 minutes later, my phone rang. It was the delivery driver. His voice was calm but curious. "Can you confirm the cancellation of all today's gift orders for the Coleman family?" I glanced at Aloan's tear-streaked face. She looked up at me unsure. I nodded and said, "Yes, confirmed." I felt a strange mix of anger and relief. Their perfect Christmas was about to fall apart, and I wasn't going to stop it. That message from my mom wasn't really a surprise. When I thought back, I remembered all the times my parents had treated Aloan differently from my sister's kids. I sat on the couch, holding Aloan close, and memories came rushing back. Aloan had always been such a sweet, kind child. When she was a toddler, my mom would shower my sister's son with brand new toys, while Aloan got old hand-me-downs, or sometimes nothing at all. At family dinners, my dad would lift my sister's daughter onto his shoulders and laugh at her jokes, but he barely noticed Aloan. She would tug at his sleeve and smile shyly, hoping for a smile back, but he ignored her. I told myself they would eventually come around, but they never did. Last Christmas was one of the hardest. Aloan had spent hours making a special card for my parents. She glued on shiny glitter and drew a reindeer with bright colors. She handed it to my mom, her little face full of hope. My mom glanced at it, muttered, "Nice," and went to praise my sister's kids for their expensive store-bought gifts. Aloan didn't cry, but I saw her shoulders slump. My heart ached. Another time, Aloan helped my dad string lights on the porch. Her tiny hands struggled with the cords, but she kept trying. My dad didn't thank her. He just barked at her to hurry. My sister, as always, swooped in with her kids and stole all the attention, leaving Aloan invisible. I tried to protect her, but it hurt her anyway. She would ask me softly, "Why don't Grandma and Grandpa like me?" I hugged her tightly and said, "They're just busy," even though it felt like a bitter lie. The worst part was that I had spent years paying for their perfect holidays. Every Christmas I bought food, decorations, and gifts. I even hired caterers and decorators, all while trying to manage my freelance graphic design work. I spent thousands of dollars hoping that maybe, just maybe, Aloan would be accepted and loved. But they never noticed her. They didn't see her. They didn't care. I opened my email again and stared at the canceled gift confirmation. Toys, clothes, a watch for my dad. Everything was gone. I had spent years giving them money, gifts, and food, and they had the audacity to call my daughter unwanted. My sister's children had gotten new bikes last Christmas, while Aloan had received only a small pat on the head. My parents posted pictures of their grandchildren, cropping Aloan out completely, as if she didn't exist. Aloan came into the room holding her stuffed bear. "Mom, are we going to Grandma's for Christmas?" she asked, her voice quiet. She already seemed to know the answer. I pulled her close and whispered, "No, sweetheart, we're staying home this year." She nodded, but her eyes looked a little sad. I wanted to yell at my parents and ask why they treated Aloan this way, but I didn't. I kissed her forehead and promised to protect her from their meanness. My sister was no better. She always arrived at family events in fancy clothes, her kids in matching outfits, while I struggled to provide even the basics for Aloan. She never stood up for Aloan or told our parents to stop favoring her own children. I remembered a summer barbecue when Aloan picked a flower and gave it to my sister. My sister smiled just a little and went back to her phone, while her husband nodded along silently. I closed my laptop, the canceled order confirmation still on the screen. Aloan deserved better than this family. I had spent years trying to buy their love, hoping they would finally see her. But that text from my mom, calling Aloan unwanted, broke something inside me. They didn't deserve her, and they didn't deserve my money. I wasn't just angry, I was done. Christmas morning arrived warm and quiet in our little home. Aloan and I stayed home, just the two of us. The kitchen smelled of gingerbread cookies. Aloan, with flour dusting her cheeks, giggled as she shaped dough into stars. We set up a small Christmas tree in the living room, its lights twinkling softly. I put on a classic holiday movie, and we curled up on the couch, her head resting on my shoulder. It was peaceful and perfect, and it was ours. Then my phone buzzed. It was a notification from my mom. She had posted a picture of their Christmas party at the ranch. The table was full of food I had paid for in years past: ham, mashed potatoes, pies. The outdoor fireplace glowed, her children ran around in new sweaters, and everyone was smiling. The caption read, "Waiting for the magic." I scrolled through more pictures. My dad was carving meat, my sister posing with her husband, everyone smiling as if nothing was wrong. Not a single present was under the tree. I smirked because I knew why. Aloan looked at the phone and asked, "Are they having fun?" I tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear and said softly, "They're doing their thing, sweetheart." I kept my voice light, not wanting to ruin our day. We returned to our movie. Aloan laughed as we munched on warm cookies. Then my sister texted, "Hey, where are the presents? The delivery guy didn't show. Did you mess up the order?" I stared at the message. She had no idea I had canceled everything. The toys for her kids, the scarf for her, the cufflinks for my dad. I had spent weeks picking those gifts, hoping maybe they would finally include Aloan. Instead, they had called her unwanted. I didn't reply. I put the phone down. More notifications arrived. My mom posted another picture of the bare tree, looking worried. My sister sent another text, sharper this time. "Saren, seriously, what happened? The kids are asking." I pictured them at the ranch house. Her son probably whining about the missing gadgets, her daughter pouting for her dolls, my parents scrambling to explain why there were no presents. I leaned back and sipped my hot cocoa. Aloan was still watching the movie, hugging her stuffed bear. I didn't feel guilty at all. They had taken my money for years, eaten my food, opened my gifts, and still treated Aloan like she didn't exist. This Christmas, they got nothing from me. I wasn't chasing their approval anymore. The phone buzzed again. Another text from my sister. "This isn't funny. Call me." I ignored it and turned the volume down. Aloan looked up at me, her eyes sparkling. "Can we make more cookies, Mom?" she asked. I grinned and pulled her into a hug. "Let's make a whole batch," I said. We went to the kitchen, her little hand in mine, and got to work. Flour dusted the counter, sugar spilled here and there, and Aloan giggled every time some dough got stuck to her fingers. The movie played softly in the background. We decorated our cookies with colorful sprinkles and tiny candies. Aloan even tried to make little shapes out of the dough: trees, stars, and a heart for me. She laughed when I accidentally put too much icing on her star, and I laughed too. I glanced at my phone one last time. A final message from my mom appeared. "Saren, what's going on? Fix this." I didn't reply. I let them wonder why their perfect Christmas had fallen apart. Aloan and I had our own magic right here. And for the first time in years, I felt free. We spent the day together, making cookies, watching movies, and just enjoying each other's company. Aloan wore her favorite pajamas, the ones with tiny reindeer all over them. She sang along with the songs in the movie, her little voice filling the room. I felt a warmth in my heart that I hadn't felt in years. When the sun set, we put our small tree lights on, making the living room glow softly. Aloan climbed onto my lap, holding her bear tightly, and whispered, "Mom, I'm glad we stayed home. This is fun." I hugged her close and kissed her forehead. "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." Later, as we cleaned up the kitchen, Aloan hummed a little Christmas tune. I smiled at her. She didn't need fancy gifts or attention from anyone else. She just needed love, and I would always give it to her. That Christmas, for the first time, Aloan felt special, seen, and loved. And I realized something important. Money, gifts, and appearances couldn't buy love or respect. What mattered was family, real family, the kind that stayed together through everything. As the night came to an end, Aloan fell asleep on the couch with her bear, a small smile on her face. I tucked her in with a blanket, turned off the lights, and whispered, "Merry Christmas, my sweet girl." And I knew deep down that no one could ever take that away from us. My phone rang, and my sister's name popped up on the screen. I paused, my thumb hovering over the decline button. I didn't know if I wanted to talk to her. But curiosity got the better of me, and I pressed answer. "Hello," I said carefully. "We're in trouble," Tara said quickly. Her voice sounded worried, even a little scared. She began telling me a long story about her little clothing store. She had opened it in Tucson 2 years ago. "It was supposed to be my big break," she said, "but it's losing money really fast." Then Tara told me that Mom and Dad had borrowed money from the bank to help her store. They used their house as a promise that they would pay it back. "It's a mess," Tara said. "We need your help to fix it." I frowned and leaned against the kitchen counter. Aloan was at school, and her backpack was still by the door. My stomach twisted. I didn't know what to think. "What kind of loan?" I asked. Tara didn't explain well. She said something about overdue payments at the bank. She didn't give details, only kept saying it was urgent. When I asked more questions, she just said, "You'll understand soon." That afternoon, I went to check the mail. Among the usual bills, there was an envelope from the bank. It was addressed to Mom and Dad, but it had been sent to my house by mistake. My hands shook as I tore it open. Inside were a bunch of papers with big red stamps saying, "Past due." Mom and Dad had borrowed $50,000 to help Tara's store. They had signed their house as a promise they would pay the money back. The papers showed 6 months of missed payments. There was a warning that the bank could take the house if they didn't pay soon. The notice said the house could be gone last week. I sat at the dining table with the papers spread out in front of me. I couldn't believe it. Mom and Dad had never told me about this. They had let me spend money on holiday dinners, Christmas lights, and gifts for Tara's kids, while hiding this huge problem. I had spent thousands on Christmases hoping it would make them like Aloan, but they had been giving money to Tara's dreams instead, risking their house. And they hadn't said a word to me. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from Mom. "We've got a small problem with the house. Can you help out? It's no big deal." I stared at the message, my jaw tightening. They had ignored Aloan for years, and now they expected me to save them. I wanted to call Tara back and ask questions, but I stopped myself. I needed time to think. I remembered the last time I had helped them. It had been 3 years ago when Dad's truck broke down. I paid $2,000 for the repair. I didn't really have that money, but I sent it anyway. They promised to pay me back, but I never saw a single penny. Tara had also asked me for $1,000 for her store's grand opening. I sent it to her, hoping it would help. She never said thank you. She didn't mention it again. She just showed up at the next family gathering with a new handbag, smiling like nothing had happened. Meanwhile, Aloan wore old sneakers because money was tight. She didn't have fancy new shoes like Tara's kids. I walked around the kitchen, looking at the loan papers again and again. I could pay it off. I had savings from my design work, enough to cover the overdue amount. But why should I? They had taken from me for years. They had used my gifts, my money, and my time. They had treated Aloan like she didn't matter at all. I pictured Aloan's face if she read that cruel text from Mom. She had been ignored so many times. Helping them now would feel like betraying her. I couldn't do that. Still, a tiny part of me is worried. They were my parents. If they lost their house, where would they go? I imagined them packing their things, moving in with Tara. Tara would probably complain about having them around. I didn't want to feel guilty if that happened. I sat back down and stared at the foreclosure notice. The bank wanted money in a few weeks. I could send it, keep their house safe, and maybe, just maybe, they would finally treat Aloan with kindness. Or, I could let them face the consequences of their choices. I tucked the papers into a drawer, feeling sick in my stomach. I hadn't decided yet, but one thing was very clear. They didn't get to hurt my daughter and still expect me to save them. Not this time. Still, I sent the money. I transferred $10,000 from my savings to pay the overdue loan, hoping maybe Mom and Dad would finally see Aloan as their granddaughter. A week later, Mom called. Her voice was unusually warm, almost friendly. "We're throwing a birthday party for Tara's son at the ranch," she said. "Bring Aloan. It'll be fun." I hesitated. My stomach twisted, but I looked at Aloan. She had hope in her eyes. "Okay," I said softly. The day of the party, Aloan was so excited she bounced up and down. She held a handmade gift, a small painted rock with a smiley face, for her cousin. I drove us to Mom and Dad's house in Tucson. Their ranch-style home stood under the bright desert sun. Balloons swayed in the yard, and I could hear laughter coming from inside. The living room was crowded and noisy. Tara's son ran around in a new soccer jersey, chased by his sister in a sparkly dress. Mom and Dad greeted us for a moment, and then turned back to the other children. Eloan tugged on my hand, pointing at the pile of presents. "Can I give him my gift?" she asked. I smiled and handed her the painted rock. Eloan walked up to the table, but Tara brushed past her. "Let the real kids open gifts first," she said, laughing. Eloan's shoulders slumped and my chest tightened. She stood there holding her little rock, unnoticed by anyone. The party moved to the backyard, where a bounce house sagged under the weight of many screaming kids. Dad grilled burgers, joking with Tara's husband. Mom fussed over the birthday boy, pinning a badge on his shirt. Eloan wandered to a corner near the outdoor fireplace and sat alone on a bench. I started to go to her, but Tara's daughter ran up, needing Mom's attention. Eloan was ignored again. My jaw clenched. She tried to help with the piñata, offering to hold the stick, but Tara waved her off. "Let the real grandkids play first," she said, laughing. I felt my blood boil. Then I heard Mom whisper to Tara near the dessert table. "She's not really our grandchild," Mom said, glancing at Eloan. "Not like your kids." Tara nodded, eyes glued to her phone. My stomach dropped. I had sent $10,000 to save their house, hoping they would finally love Eloan. But instead, they said this where Eloan could hear them. I looked at Eloan. She had heard it too. I wanted to scream, to shout at them, to tell them they were being cruel, but I stayed calm for Eloan. I walked over and knelt beside her. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" I whispered. She nodded, but her eyes shined with tears. We left early. In the car, Eloan was quiet. The little rock she had made sat on her lap. Back home, she curled up on the couch, hugging her stuffed bear. "Mom," she whispered, "why don't they want me?" Her words hit me like a punch in the stomach. I pulled her close and stroked her hair. "Some people don't see how special you are," I said, my voice shaking. "But I do, and that's enough." Eloan began to cry softly, her small body shaking. I held her tight, my own tears falling. That night I lay awake thinking about everything. I kept seeing Eloan's shy smile fade when she stood by the gift table. I remembered Mom and Dad hurting her again. I realized something very important. I had given them one last chance, and they had failed. I could not let them hurt Eloan anymore. They didn't deserve her. They didn't deserve me. I got out of bed, opened my laptop, and checked my bank account. The $10,000 I had sent to the bank was gone. The house was safe, yes, but nothing else had changed. My family was still the same. Selfish, cruel, and blind to how wonderful Eloan is. I closed the laptop. I was done waiting for them to change. Soon more texts came in from my family. "Mom, Saren, we need to talk. It's urgent. Tara. The store is in trouble again. Please, we need you." I stared at the screen. I had already sent $10,000 to save their house. Now they wanted more. I didn't reply. I let the messages pile up, ignoring them. I sat back and thought about Eloan. She had been ignored, hurt, and treated as if she didn't matter. But she was my daughter. She was kind, smart, and loving. She deserved to be protected. I decided then that I would never let anyone treat Eloan badly again. No one. Not Mom, not Dad, not Tara. I would protect her, love her, and make sure she knew she was important. I would not let them hurt her anymore. And in that moment, I felt strong. I felt sure. I had spent years trying to earn their love, helping them with money, gifts, and kindness. But they had never really cared. It was time to stop. I closed my eyes and pictured Eloan's face, her little smile, the way her eyes sparkled when she was happy. I promised myself that I would always be there for her. No matter what, I would make sure she felt loved, safe, and special every single day. And as I lay there that night, listening to Eloan breathing softly in the next room, I knew something important. Some people will never change. But love can. And I would give Eloan all the love in the world, because she deserved it. A few days later, I met my friend Amara at a little cafe in Tucson. Amara had been my best friend since high school. She was the kind of friend who was honest, steady, and loyal. You could always count on her. I felt like I could tell her anything, and I did. I told her about the mean text my mom had sent about Eloan, the Christmas that got canceled, and the birthday party where my mom said my daughter wasn't really our grandchild. I even told her about the loan I had paid off for my parents. Amara listened carefully, her eyes narrowing as she took a slow sip of her latte. She didn't say anything at first, just looked at me with that serious, understanding look she always had. They've been using you for years, she said flatly. You paid for their holidays, their house, and they still treat Aloan like she means nothing. Stop helping them. Protect your girl. Her words hit me hard. Amara was right. I realized I had spent so much money, time, and hope trying to make my family love Aloan. I had hoped that if I did enough, they would change and treat Aloan like the granddaughter she truly was. But they didn't. They just kept hurting us. I remembered Aloan after that party. She had sat quietly in the corner, her small hands clutching a little stuffed bear. She had cried softly, her tiny voice asking, "Why don't they want me?" The memory made my chest ache. I couldn't let that happen again. Not to my little girl. When I got home, I checked the mail. I felt nervous, almost expecting another letter from the bank. And there it was. An envelope addressed to my parents, but it had been sent to my house by mistake. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were loan documents showing another debt, this one for $75,000. It had been taken out 6 months earlier for Tarara's boutique. Just like the first loan, their ranch house was listed as collateral. But this time it was worse. The balance was 8 months overdue, and the bank said foreclosure was coming soon. They hadn't told me a word about it, not even when I had paid off the first loan. My hands trembled as I spread the papers out on my kitchen table. They felt like evidence of betrayal. I scrolled through their messages again. My mom had called it urgent, but she hadn't mentioned the new loan. Tarara's messages were vague, full of excuses, never telling the truth. They expected me to save them again without question. But Amara's warning echoed in my mind. Protect your girl. I thought about every time I had let them hurt Aloan. Every Christmas, every birthday, every family gathering where she had felt invisible. I had bought their dinners, sent gifts, and even saved their home, hoping they would change. But this hidden loan was the last straw. They didn't just want help, they expected it like I owed them. I decided not to answer their texts. My mom called again. Saren called me. We're family. Then Tara sent a message. The bank is calling every day. Please. I turned my phone face down. I wasn't going to let them guilt me anymore. Aloan was my priority, not their problems. I reread the loan documents carefully. The bank warned that foreclosure would begin in a month if the $75,000 balance wasn't paid. I couldn't cover it without losing everything I had. And even if I could, why should I? They had lied to me again. All while treating my daughter like she didn't belong. For a moment, I imagined confronting them. I imagined driving to the ranch, laying the papers on the table, and asking my mom why she had said Aloan wasn't really her grandchild. I imagined asking Tara how she had let them risk their house for her failing store. I imagined looking my dad in the eye and asking why he had never stood up for us. The thought didn't scare me anymore. It made me feel strong. That evening, I called Amara again. I'm done with their games, I told her. They hid this new loan from me, and I'm not going to help them. She didn't hesitate. Good, she said. You don't owe them anything. Aloan needs a mother who puts her first, not a family that keeps taking from you. Her words felt like an anchor, steadying me. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was ready. I gathered all the paperwork, the first loan and the second loan, and put them carefully in a folder. I checked my bank account. The $10,000 I had sent before was gone. I looked toward Aloan's room, where she slept curled up with her stuffed bear. She deserved better than this cycle of lies and guilt. I wasn't going to let my family's greed and dishonesty define her life or mine. I made my decision. I would face my parents and Tara soon, not to rescue them, but to tell them the truth. I was done. One day, my parents showed up at my house without any warning. Aloan was at school, which I was glad about because I didn't want her to see this. My mom and dad were holding a folder of papers. My mom's eyes looked scared and pleading. I opened the door slowly, my face hard. What do you want? I asked, my voice cold. My mom stepped forward. Saren, the house is going up for auction next week, she said, holding out the folder. We need your help to stop it. My dad stayed behind her, silent, his hands in his pockets. I looked at the papers and saw the bank's logo. It was the second loan I had uncovered. The notice said foreclosure would begin soon, and $75,000 was still unpaid. I let them in, not because I wanted to, but because I had things to say. We sat at my kitchen table, the folder between us. Why should I step in? I asked calmly. You ignored Aloan her whole life. You called her unwanted in a text. You said she wasn't really your grandchild at that party. And now you expect me to save your house. My mom's face crumpled. We didn't mean it like that, she said. We're family, Saren. We're desperate. My dad finally spoke, his voice rough. We've always been there for you. I laughed bitterly. There for me? I paid for your Christmases, birthdays, dinners, gifts. I sent $10,000 to save your house already. And you still treat my daughter like she doesn't matter. I walked around the kitchen, thinking of Alohan's quiet sobs, her painted rock ignored at the party, her tiny voice asking, "Why don't they want me?" My heart hardened. My dad tried again. "If we lose the house, we'll have nowhere to go." I shook my head. "You should have thought of that before risking it for Tarara's store. You chose her over Alohan and me. You're on your own now." I handed the folder back to them, my hand steady. They froze. I opened the door. "Leave," I said. My mom clutched the papers and walked out with my dad, not saying another word. That night, I blocked their numbers along with Tarara's. I unfollowed them on social media. Their perfect family photos disappeared from my feed. It felt like I had cut a heavy chain I had dragged for years. A week later, Amara told me the ranch house had been sold at auction. My parents moved in with Tarara, squeezed into her small apartment with her kids and husband. I didn't feel guilty. They had made their choices, and I had made mine. Alohan and I settled into a new rhythm. Life felt calmer and happier. One evening, we stood in the kitchen, mixing dough for chocolate chip cookies. The Tucson sunset shone through the window, painting the room in warm orange light. Alohan giggled as she sneaked a little piece of dough, her eyes sparkling. We set up our small Christmas tree, its lights twinkling like tiny stars. As we baked and decorated, I watched Alohan, my heart full. She was enough. More than enough. I realized something very important. Family isn't just about blood or holidays. It's about who shows up, who really sees you, and who loves you for who you are. My parents and Tara never did that for Alohan. They took my money, my time, and my hope, and gave only pain in return. But Alohan and I? We were a family. Small, imperfect, but real. I hugged Alohan that night, holding her close. She hugged me back tightly, and I felt a peace I hadn't felt in years. Amara had been right all along. Protect your girl. And I would. No one would ever hurt Alohan like that again. Not now, not ever. We made plans for more holidays, little traditions just for us. We would bake, decorate, laugh, and love each other. No lies, no pretending, no guilt. Just the two of us, together. We were enough.